In this week's episode of One Piece, we take a break and leave Whole Cake Island as we delve a little deeper into the backstory of Sanji Vinsmoke and see why he left his militaristic Power Ranger-esque family. Forgive my energy this week, guys. I just had my wisdom teeth removed yesterday, so my jaw is a little sore, so I'm not going to go too far into some of the bigger details of this review because, frankly, my jaw hurts like shit, and I'm ready to get some rest. But I will say that this week's episode of One Piece was pretty damn awesome, and one of those episodes that makes me appreciate the anime version a little bit more than the manga version. I actually didn't even realize while reading the manga that Germa 66's entire island was like one that floated on the sea and consisted of all of these massive transponder snails which connect with one another. That's a really cool detail. The fact that they're actually a part of this kingdom which can be anywhere they want them to be, and they can even separate it into all of these smaller parts. But this entire episode right here was essentially all about Germa 66 and the Vinsmoke family. First off, let me just say that Germa 66 is a total sausage fest. Outside of Reiju, pretty much every single citizen is either male or a soldier. And that brings us to the Vinsmokes themselves, which is ruled by the Vinsmoke family, with their leader being Judge Vinsmoke, the father of Sanji, who has one of the craziest, most manliest cleft chins that I have ever seen. That and his overall attire is just pretty damn badass. He basically looks like a freaking Super Saiyan who wears battle armor. It doesn't take long for Sanji and his father to start butting heads. In fact, the bulk of this episode is dedicated to them having a pretty epic battle. But before we even get to that, let's talk a little bit more about the backstory of Sanji, which is revealed a little bit more in this chapter. Originally, he was a member of the Vinsmoke family along with his brothers, sisters, and father, but he was seen as the weakest member of the group because he wasn't a warmongering battle monster. Instead, he just wanted to cook, because that's what Sanji does. And he was looked down upon by his other brothers and sisters and father, and his brothers would always beat the ever-living shit out of him. And by beat the living shit out of him, I mean, man, they had no qualms in knocking his teeth out, slamming his head up against walls, breaking the frickin' pavement with just his face. These guys take a little too much enjoyment out of beating up Sanji, and what's most disturbing about all of this is that Sanji's father, Judge, does nothing about it. There's a heartbreaking scene where Sanji's brothers are beating the crap out of him, and his father just walks by, looks at him, and pretty much does nothing, basically disowning his son right there. Even Reiju, who seems like she has a much nicer relationship with Sanji, just laughs over seeing her brother get the ever-living shit beat out of him. I'd say of the Straw Hats, Sanji has easily one of the most depressing backstories. Not only having a family that didn't care for him, but all of the crazy shit that he had to go through when he ended up at the Barati restaurant. He's been through a lot of crazy shit, and it's amazing that he hasn't even talked about this stuff up until this point. Of course, everything in his backstory was so traumatizing that he did everything in his power to get away from his warmongering family. But now that he's caught in their clutches, he's going to be forced to do what they want. And that includes fighting against his father, Judge. His father decides to basically bring his son outside so that they can have a nice little fight with each other, because that's what men do. They communicate with their fists. Or in Judge's case, he communicates with a giant spear that he uses to fillet people left and right. That's one of the cool things about Judge. He's got this really great outfit with this golden helmet on, this long flowing hair, and this giant spear, which I'm presuming is a little more intricate than just being a pointy weapon, considering that the Vinsmokes use a lot of really advanced technology. Something that's also brought to light in this episode. We get to see that during the fight between Sanji and Yonji, Yonji's face got completely messed up. The weird, metal earmuff that he's wearing got completely, embedded in the side of his head. And this one Germa 66 scientist actually is able to fix him by putting his head in a massive vice grip. It makes no sense, but it's basically there just to illustrate that the Vinsmokes have a lot of access to some crazy technology. And they've used this technology to take over a number of kingdoms. In fact, there's this one scene, too, that's also a little backstory about Judge and how he was able to take out these 4 nations and all 4 of their kings at once, just with his supreme power and, of course, that big, massive spear. And then, of course, there is the battle between Judge and Sanji. This is basically just the beginning of their fight, but it's just a lot of them trading blows with their signature techniques, with Sanji using all of his kicking abilities and Judge using his massive spear. What's really awesome is that everybody in Germa 66 is completely enamored by the fact that Sanji isn't using a raid suit, which are those suits which are used by his brother and sister, and he's seemingly just using his feet in battle. This starts to piss off Judge to the point where he actually throws a sword to him and tells him to use it, but of course, Sanji is a cook, and he doesn't want to use his hands unless it is for cooking. In my humble opinion, I think the most badass scene of the episode, though, is when Sanji makes this declaration to his father and just casually lights a cigarette right there in front of him. That was just manly. Aside from all of that, there's basically just another scene of Luffy running through the seducing woods, but that's pretty much all you get from that. It's basically there as just filler before we get to Sanji and his father fighting. So what's the rundown on this week's episode of One Piece? This is one that I've been looking forward to for a long time. Sanji versus Judge. It's pretty damn awesome. And Judge is a really cool looking character. It's hard to believe that Sanji actually came from this guy, considering how incredibly different they actually do look from one another. But you definitely see a lot more of his relations to his brother and his sister, considering how similar they all look to one another, aside from the fact that they all have different hair colors. And that's of course because they're sort of a play on the Power Rangers or the Super Sentai, with Sanji basically originally being the Yellow Ranger of his family. He even had the 3 on his shirt, which is of course a pun on his name, Sanji, San, Ichi ni San. He was the 3rd member of the group, and the 3rd oldest of the entire Vinsmoke family. But unlike the others, he just didn't have the same personality when it came to fighting in wars or just fighting in general. And this isn't the end of Sanji's backstory. There's still a little bit more of this, and I'm sure it's all going to be really interesting. You can definitely see some hints to that in the intro of the show, like when you get to see a younger version of Sanji who's wearing this weird metal mask. We'll get to that a little bit later in some of my other reviews, but I really love how they're delving into this one, and honestly, I'm enjoying it a lot more in the anime version, even more so than in the manga. Sanji's fight with his father also isn't really all that groundbreaking in terms of the action that we've seen from the series, but it's still really exciting, and just the tension is there so much that you can cut it with a knife. It just gets me excited to see what else Germa 66 is actually going to be capable of. And like I said, outside of the fighting and Sanji's backstory, just getting to see a little bit more of how Germa 66 works is really damned intriguing. Like I said, I love the fact that they have this like giant floating kingdom which can separate into different pieces. And I like the fact that every single like brother, and I'm assuming the sister as well, have like their very own personal castles which are in the kingdom as well. We haven't really seen too much of the actual like kingdom itself in terms of the people that live there. It basically just seems like a giant military organization, which according to Judge is something that he's completely okay with. Also, I thought it was really funny, and this is going to be a running gag for the rest of this entire arc, the fact that Sanji's captured, he still has a lot of his personality pop out from time to time, like when he realizes that he has all of these beautiful handmaidens who are there to do anything for him. He's still Sanji at heart, and he still has a raging libido. So let's recap. We got to learn a lot more about Germa 66, the military organization, the soldiers that are there, the Vinsmoke family, Sanji versus his father, and a little bit more about his backstory where we get to learn that he was the personal punching bag of all of his brothers. I can't wait to see more of this in the future, and honestly I hope it's handled as well as it was here. This was a solid addition to the One Piece series. It's still kind of surreal to see that one of the mainstays of the Straw Hat Pirates, one that's been there since the beginning of the series practically, has a pretty intriguing and deep backstory. I really wonder if we're going to delve a little bit more into the backstories of some of the other Straw Hat Pirates. Then again, we never really got to see what happened to Sanji before he became a cook on the floating restaurant. So this is all really cool stuff, and I can't wait to see more of it, and that's what made this episode so damned entertaining. Not that much actually happened, but everything that was here was pretty damn solid, and it's one of those episodes of One Piece that you definitely don't want to miss. So I'm going to give this week's episode a 5 out of 5. Check it out, One Piece fans. If any of you guys did watch this week's episode, make sure to tell me what you thought about it in the comments section below. Are you enjoying Sanji's backstory? Did you like getting to get the tour of the Germa 66 kingdom? What do you hope to see in the next part of the battle between Sanji and his father and the rest of the Whole Cake Island arc? Thank you guys for watching this review. Make sure to subscribe to the channel for all things One Piece anime and manga related. Make sure to leave me a comment telling me what you liked about this week's episode or something that you didn't like, or if you have any questions for me, I'm always down for a good conversation. And of course, make sure to like this video if you liked it. I'll see you guys next time. Take care, and as always, stay dandy, baby.